Hi, I'm Suhi Ting from University Malaysia, Sarawak. My core researchers are Jiin-Yih YEO and Colin Jerome. We would like to share with you our findings on religion and attitudes towards LGBT in Malaysia.
Thank you, Dr. Ting, for your introduction. In this digital era, LGBT, which stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender, has come into public consciousness of Malaysians more than ever. Present-day Malaysians, especially the younger generation, they are more exposed and they are more informed of LGBT culture with easy accessibility of media. At the same time, Malaysian authorities are also becoming more public and vigilant in addressing homosexuality through secular and Sharia laws. Malaysia is an Islamic country that prohibits LGBT, so all individuals who are involved in any unnatural sexual relationship will be fined, imprisoned, and caned according to the civil law. LGBT is a controversial issue in Malaysia. There exists both support and discrimination against LGBT. Some of the prominent LGBT movements are such as Sexuality Merdeka and the #LoveWings movement, which promotes and publicizes the ideology of LGBT in Malaysia. As a result, acceptance of LGBT communities by Malaysian society has grown over the years. Researchers have studied several influencing factors related to attitudes towards LGBT. For example, social media. According to Nurul Jana and her team, their study revealed that social media play significant role in disseminating LGBT information and have positively influenced public acceptance towards LGBT with the spreading of LGBT movements in Malaysia. However, online media sources which portray homosexuality in a negative manner had shaped negative attitude of members of the public towards LGBT phenomenon. Apart from that, Ng Lo Morella study showed that Malaysian nursing students held negative attitudes towards homosexuality, which was significantly influenced by intrinsic religiosity. Their Empoire's study also revealed that undergraduates who score higher in intrinsic religiosity show more prejudicial attitudes towards homosexuality. Their study also revealed that undergraduates who held more feminist gender role belief had more positive attitudes towards LGBT. In terms of gender, males held more unfavorable attitudes towards LGBT than females. Several studies show that religion influences public acceptance towards homosexuality and support of transgender people. From the religious perspective, for Muslims, LGBT is against Islamic rules and it is considered as haram or impure behavior. It is also considered as a major sin and against nature. According to the Islamic scholars, LGBT in Islam is viewed as a crime and it is also interpreted as breach of the religion of nature. In the case of Christianity, most of the Christian churches in general reiterated their stance that the practice of homosexuality is against God's teaching, it is sinful, and it is also considered as morally wrong. As for Buddhism, Buddhism professes a higher tolerance of LGBT. Buddhism highlights the principles of equality, enlightenment, and compassion towards LGBT. In comparison to the attitudes held towards LGBT across religions, Muslims were found to have more negative attitudes towards homosexuals, followed by Christians. The existing findings are consistent on other religions, for example, Hinduism, Buddhism, Orthodox Christianity, and freethinkers being more receptive to LGBT than Muslims. Here, studies on LGBT in Malaysia are reported. According to Ng's study, Malaysian nursing students show negative attitudes towards LGBT, and there is a significant correlation between homosexuality and intrinsic religiosity. Apart from that, Fung, Leo, Nalilas, and Lo's study on the attitude of medical students towards LGBT patients revealed that Muslims were the least positive towards LGBT, followed by Christians, Buddhists, Hindus, and others. In terms of ethnicity, Malays had more negative attitudes compared with the Chinese, Indians, and the others. The study also revealed that there were no gender differences in attitudes towards LGBT. Besides, study also showed that most of Muslims and Christians regard LGBT as a sin. Other religions, such as Hinduism, view LGBT as morally wrong. However, these previous studies involved only Malaysian undergraduate students filling in questionnaires, and the reasons underlying their attitudes towards LGBT were not explored. Therefore, this study aimed to examine how religion shapes attitudes towards LGBT from various segments of Malaysian society, focusing in particular on their rationalization for accepting or rejecting LGBT. In this study, there were 12 participants from different religious backgrounds. There were 5 Muslims, 6 Christians, and 1 Buddhist. As for data collection procedure, after we sought the consent from the participants, an appointment was fixed for the interview. The participants were given the Google Meet link for the interview, and they used either mobile phone or personal computer to join the interview session. The interviews were audio recorded. As for data analysis, it was guided by Caulfield's thematic analysis. Color codes were used to identify the key phrases. Since this study examined Malaysia's attitudes towards LGBT from the perspective of religion, the keyword religion was identified and highlighted using the search function in Microsoft Word. During the thematic analysis, only the inferences and their rationalizations pertaining to religious beliefs were coded. Throughout the coding process, main themes and sub-themes were identified. As for the results of our study, a majority of the participants rejected LGBT. There were 8 out of 12 participants. And of the 12 participants, 7 participants, 2 Christians and 5 Muslims, rejected LGBT on religious grounds, and 1 Christian participant rejected LGBT due to other influences. Apart from that, there were 4 participants, 3 Christians and 1 Buddhist, who were supportive of LGBT. However, only 1 Buddhist participant rationalized accepting LGBT on religious grounds. The results of the study also show that all Muslim participants show negative attitudes towards LGBT, which is mainly influenced by their religion. This is the concept map that shows the rationalizations of rejecting LGBT. As you can see here, the participants rejected LGBT using 3 rationalizations, namely, LGBT is morally wrong, LGBT is against biological truth, and LGBT is against God's teaching. During interview, some Christian and Muslim participants were of the view that LGBT is against God's teaching. For example, P1, he's a Christian participant. He stated that LGBT is against God's teaching and God's design. He illustrated God's creation by quoting a Bible verse taken from the book of Genesis, where God created male and female from the beginning of his creation, and how God blessed the humankind to fill the earth and subdue it. Likewise, P3, a Muslim participant, strongly rejected LGBT because it is forbidden in Islam. He quoted the story of Prophet Lut from Al-Quran, particularly the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah as a consequence of God's wrath against male same-sex erotic practices. Besides, LGBT is also considered as a major sin. Apart from that, P2 also viewed religious beliefs as if it is a family legacy that should be passed down from generation to generation. P2's family tried to pass on this negative view of LGBT in the hope that P2 will perceive LGBT as something wrong and it is unreligious, and P2 should preserve the identity as a religious Muslim by not making friends with LGBT individuals and committing in same-sex sexuality, as you can see from Excerpt 3. The study also showed that there were 2 Christian participants, P1 and P8. They show disapproving attitudes towards LGBT based on the biological truth that only male and female can produce offspring. According to them, God created men and women with different sexual organs. In sexual reproduction, only male and female are able to produce genetically unique offspring. Besides, LGBT is considered as morally wrong by P8. As you can see from excerpt 6, P8 said that it is always the opposite sex to have sexual relationship. And P8 also made it clear that she could not accept the same gender having intimate or sexual relationship, as it went against nature. Although both Christian participants, P1 and P8, they show disapproving attitudes towards LGBT practice, both of them stress that LGBT individuals should be compassionately cared for. In excerpt 7, P1 said that LGBT individuals should not be persecuted. In fact, they are the minority group that deserve sympathy and care. Besides, moral support should be given to LGBT individuals. Referring to excerpt 8, P8 shared that she is willing to counsel LGBT individuals. She's willing to talk to them and also pray together with them if she encounters any LGBT individuals in the future. In these studies, there was only one Buddhist participant, P10, who gave the other side of the story. P10 was the only participant who accepted LGBT on religious grounds. This concept map shows her rationalization for accepting LGBT, when love is a core Buddhist teaching. According to P10, seeing it from a Buddhist perspective, it may not be necessarily a sexual misconduct if their sexual actions are motivated by love and desire to share and give comfort, regardless of the gender, as illustrated in excerpt 9. P9 also highlighted that LGBT individuals are not violent, such that they could hurt people, and Buddhists should tolerate opposite sex relationship because the admonition of Buddha is not to harm others through sexuality. She also believed that LGBT individuals are just seeking for love and wanted to be loved by their partners. Apart from this study also showed that most of the participants asserted that LGBT individuals should be accepted on the basis that they are human beings who deserve to be respected too, even though they have disapproving views towards LGBT culture and value. The idea of non-judgmental acceptance and tolerance to LGBT individuals underlie the rationalizations for accepting LGBT. Now we come to the discussion of the findings. The findings of the study reveal that most of the participants show negative attitudes towards LGBT on religious grounds. All Muslim participants rejected LGBT as it is against their religion. Although most of the participants were not in favor of same-sex unions, they believed that LGBT individuals should be treated equally, but not to discriminate them. Acceptance towards LGBT individuals was on the basis that they are human beings who deserve respect. This reflects the sense of Human Rights Commission of Malaysia, Suhakam, which highlights the universality of human rights as everyone deserves the same basic rights under the Federal Constitution. This is also supported by an earlier study that most of the heterosexual participants accepted LGBT individuals as fellow human beings and they should be treated as such even though LGBT is prohibited by their religions. The present study showed that Muslim participants are less tolerant of LGBT compared to Christian participants. This finding concurs with past findings. For example, Adam and Pitt study showed that Muslims have more disapproving attitudes regarding homosexuality and other religions. In Malaysia, Ng found that Muslims have more unfavorable attitudes towards homosexuals compared to Christians, Buddhists, Hindus, and others. This phenomenon can be explained by the fact that Malaysia is an Islamic country and Muslim belief LGBT contradicts with their religious beliefs, and LGBT lifestyle is punishable law in Malaysia with imprisonment and caning. Only there was one Buddhist participant in the study. The finding on love for all concurred with Wung's finding on Buddhists being generally more accepting and being non-judgmental towards LGBT compared to other religions. The study revealed that religion has a large influence on an individual's attitude towards LGBT. This is in accordance with many other studies that found positive correlations between religion and homosexuality. However, this study did not investigate intrinsic religiosity of participants. The level of religiosity can be one of the strong predictors of one's attitudes towards LGBT. It is recommended that future research should include different dimensions of religiosity, such as personal practices, religious exclusivity, religious beliefs, experiences, knowledge, and saliency. Due to the small sample size, the findings of the study are not representative of the Malaysian population, where Muslim is about 3/5 of the population. Future research should include a larger sample size in order to collect more substantial raw data. Finally, we would like to acknowledge that this research is funded by Ministry of Education Malaysia under the Fundamental Research Grant Scheme, FRGS, with the numbers stated here. If you have any questions, you may contact me at this email address. With that, I end my presentation. Thank you.